afternoon and welcome to an absolutely glorious day here in Norfolk. Just go round the bend. Tonight I'm off to the Whitwell and Reetham rail station where they have a bike night every Friday during the summer. Actually, I think it might be all year, but it just depends on the weather. And I've recently started earning a bit of money by doing roadside photography, something that's quite common around the rest of the country, but sadly lacking in Norfolk. So I decided to fill the void, and it's taken off quite well. I did have all sorts of plans for this year of a tour around Great Britain and Ireland, and I was going to take you along on that. And as you know from my previous videos, my aim was to help you with your photography and filming and see how we can do things on a budget, do things simply. There's a guy behind me going past, right through the crossroads. And unfortunately, great plans don't always come to fruition, and life, the universe, and just about everything got in the way, and as a result I had to cancel the trip. So hopefully I'm planning on doing it again, but doing it for the first time in September this year, 2023, and assuming all goes well and I can earn enough sheckles from doing this little job, then the plans will come off. But who knows? Life just has ways of throwing curveballs at you. So, as I simply haven't had the time to go out and make any videos because I'm busy doing roadside photography, I thought, well, the best thing to do is maybe make a video of roadside photography. A little bit of an idea of what you might need to do if you want to capture similar images of bikes moving, kit that you need, that kind of thing. And then we'll head back home afterwards, and I'll run through just some of the editing steps that I go through before I actually put the images up for sale on the website. So one of the nice benefits of doing this job is that I get to ride my bike to work, and then at the end of each photo session I get to visit some of the bike nights that take place in the area. This one is a reasonable size one. It's a nice, it's a lovely little bike night. It's Whitwell and Reetham. Quite a few classic motorcycles come there. Tritons, Nortons, old Triumphs, VSAs, and some weird and wonderful things. I think there was one there the other week with two engines back to back. So, and I get to ride through some glorious countryside and enjoy what would be the commute. Going over the bridge in what is arguably one of the most famous towns on the Norfolk Broads. Swans, boats, tourists, fish and chips. every week, and I get that corner wrong every week. And just up here, this is my little spot. I will spend the next couple of hours. Ready-made piece of wood, and the bikes are all coming fast already. And there we are. So now all I need to do is get set up and then sit and wait for bikes to go past. So once I'm all set up, I'll explain why I'm here, what I'm doing, why I've chosen this corner, and yeah, we'll take it from there. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of drone footage in now to show you the location, and why I've chosen this is literally the station is about a mile, maybe 2 at most, in that direction, and you can already hear, I can already hear, you may not be able to, bikes coming. So they're going to come along here. It's a lovely bendy road, it's a B road, the surface is good. And this is a really stunning corner, as you can see from the drone footage. Importantly though, the sun is coming from that direction, right, and will ultimately swing around so that it keeps this lit. The only downside is I do get the shadow of the trees. What you really don't want is to be shooting into the sun. It's not that the camera can't cope, it's the fact that you're just shooting the dark side, if you like, of the bikes. And that's not so good. Here comes first customer. And really it's as simple as that. Once the camera is set up, I simply track the bikes through, keeping the focus point locked on. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. Okay, so with photography, in reality, the technical aspect of it, you've only got 3 things to consider. Well, arguably 4, but we'll stick with 3 at the moment. Shutter speed is how long you're actually exposing the picture for. Aperture is just a hole, so basically it's how much light you let in for the duration of the shutter speed. And then you have your ISO setting, which is the sensitivity of the sensor itself. Now all of this is all lovely. The reality of it is though, what you need is a shutter speed that is just fast enough to not blur the motorcycle, but slow enough to blur the background. And we've got more bikes coming. And basically what you do is you point the camera, you set your shutter speed, you point the camera at the bike, you pan with the bike, keeping the bike in the same place, so the camera can focus on the bike and get that nice and sharp. Meanwhile, the shutter speed is so slow that the background is seen to be moving, and that's where you get the motion. You also get the rotation of the wheels. There you go. Now, every location is different. So for here, a couple more coming. Too close together these, so I'll only get the first one probably. I will try. For here, I will normally start with a shutter speed of about 250th of a second. And that's to get my eye in to begin with, and then ultimately I can hopefully bring it down, once I've got my rhythm, bring it down to about 200, even 1/60th of a second, which gives a really nice motion blur and gets the motion on the wheels. Too fast and the wheels will just be frozen and it'll literally look like the bike is just stuck there. It's all about shutter speed, and that's the critical thing with regard to a camera. If you want to do this, you must have a camera that is capable of controlling the shutter speed. And on many cameras you'll have an S setting. I think Canons, they call it TV or something. But you can put it into an auto mode for shutter speed, select the shutter speed you want, and it will then choose all the other variables for you. In my case, I shoot in manual, right, and I have my ISO set to auto, so my aperture is fixed and my shutter speed is fixed, and then I just have the ISO, the sensitivity, fluctuate, which gives me a constant exposure, a constant equalization of light, if you like, but allows for fluctuations. They are talking to the camera and I missed the bike. They don't have to sneak up on you. Okay, so if shutter speed controls how long it's open, what's the point of aperture? What's that all about? Well, the adjustment of the aperture affects how much is in focus, and they call it, the technical term is depth of field. So it's the distance, it'll be blurred in the front, in focus, blurred in the background. Now when you're shooting bikes that are moving quickly, you need an aperture that gives you a big depth of field, because at one point you're shooting the bike at an angle, which means you want the front and the back of the bike, the whole length of the bike, in focus, and at another point you're shooting it side on, so it only needs to be a narrower depth of field. Trouble is, you can't alter that quickly enough as you're taking the pictures. As you can see with the motor drive, you're literally shooting in seconds, and it's very difficult. So there's no point in me giving you numbers, because they're all a bit irrelevant, because they're all a bit different depending on what camera you've got, because different cameras have different depth of field depending on the size of the sensor. But you want to set a depth of an f-stop, which is how aperture is measured. You want to set an aperture which is going to give you that depth of field. The problem you will have is, as you start closing down your aperture to give you a bigger depth of field, a bigger area in focus, your shutter speed will start slowing down in order to ensure the same amount of light comes in. Yeah? Smaller hole, you need to open it longer, i.e. longer shutter speed. Hence why I use the sensitivity to fluctuate. That means I can set a fixed aperture, I can set a fixed shutter speed, and the camera will just compensate and give me a nice exposure. So the camera does an awful lot of the work for me. often get a message saying, "Did you get me? I was on the red Ducati," and I haven't got a clue. You're seeing the speed that some of these come past. I'm looking through the viewfinder. All I'm concentrating on is just getting the bike in the centre of the frame. Half the time, I don't know what it is I'm taking pictures of. I will be able to tell when I get back on the computer, but at this point, it's virtually impossible for me to remember. You just see Suzuki, or if it's green, it tends to be Kawasaki. Harleys tend to be memorable. Yeah, I think that was a Yamaha something or other, but only because I looked in the camera. I ain't got a clue when it's flying past. So I mentioned earlier there were three things. There's a fourth, arguably, which is the focal length, or the amount of zoom you put on. Now, I tend to shoot with a fixed length. I set the zoom amount to get a nice space around the bike to allow me to recompose back on the computer. I don't zoom in and zoom out as I'm following the bike. If you do that, there's a very good chance that the camera can't keep up with the autofocus whilst you're zooming. You can do a phenomenal job of tracking focus when it's at a constant focal length, is the correct term, and but you try zooming in and out and it's difficult. We've got another one coming here. Crucial things for good photography is a decent cheese and pickle sandwich. Absolutely essential to keep your creative juices flowing. Okay, so it's now 7 o'clock and I've learned from previous, you can sit and wait and wait and wait just for the next bike, but at the end of the day it's just as well to just pack up. Plus I want to go and see the bikes at the bike night Whitwell. So now just pack everything up. Well, that was a tad annoying because I just set the camera up to do a lovely little shot of me packing everything away, and then I was going to speed it up like a time lapse, only I forgot to press record. Anyway, it's all packed up now, and I'm now just going to ride down to the train station, which is only a couple of miles down the road. First I have to do a little bit of off-roading with an FJR, which isn't so that's it. 2 hours, well, just over 2 hours sitting there, and all told taken about 2,000 images, which is to be expected, and obviously hopefully now you realise not particularly surprising when you take into account how many shots I take of each bike going past. There we are. That is Whitwell and Reefham Station bike night on a Fridays. There is food and other stuff there. I didn't bother walking down to that, and now I just have a 1 hour ride back home through well, to be honest, I'll take the A47 because I just want to get home now. Right, so it is now actually a couple of days later because I had a lazy day, but here I am sitting at the computer, and now I'm going to run through a few of the steps that I go through that get the images that you saw me taking onto the website, so that you can view them and buy them. So we'll move over to the computer, and the first thing that I'll do is insert the memory card. So there is my there are all my files, and now I'll open up here, and as you can see I've already created a folder. I've just named it Corsten, and now what I will do is select all of those and copy them across to the computer, and there we are. That's all the files. Now that was 10 minutes of my life I'll never get back. Okay, so the next step is to cull out all of the images that are out of focus, I've missed the bike, etc. For that I use a rather posh sounding program called Narrative Select, and the reason I use this is very simple, is because this one you can use for free, and it does everything that I need, and I don't have to pay anything. So here we choose a folder. I will navigate to the folder I created. There we are. Choose folder. That's fine. It now just imports the image, and here we are. And why I use this program is that it's incredibly fast at showing me the images. So here is the first image of the night, and from this I can zoom in and I can check for sharpness, but it allows me to immediately go through each of these and select or cull out the ones which I'm missed. And it's a very simple process. I just simply use the arrow keys and I use the X button to reject any that are out of focus. So we just simply scroll all the way through, keep going, move the mouse out of the way, keep going, and they look nice and sharp. They always take half a second to load up. Now that one's blurred, so I just hit the X button, and then it rejects it, and I move on. See, that's another not very sharp, not sharp. Yeah, and I now have to do this for the 2,000 odd images that I took. So once again I will speed up this process and give you an indication of how long that took. Right, so there we are. That is all of the files now gone through, and all of the ones that I've rejected are all marked with an X, and that was 1 hour and 1.25 hours that took for me to go through. So select all the rejected images, which in this case is 848, leaving me with 1,400 images left to edit. So I then select all them, and this will take all the rejected files and stick them in a spare folder. Okay, so now I can clear the filters. These now shows me the remaining 1,459. Select all of them, and what I will now do is drag these down here into Lightroom, and then we'll just wait for Lightroom to open. And like everything, it all takes a few moments to open up. So this has got all of them now into Lightroom, into the other program. Then we import them and sit and wait. So there we are. that's all the files now imported into Lightroom, which was another 5 or 10 minutes. The point of Lightroom is that it allows us to do all sorts of tweaks and adjustments. So down the side here you'll see all of my roadside locations. This was Corston Road. I will now create a collection set, as it is referred to, 1606 2023. There we are. And then everything that's in here I will select. I will now create what's known as a collection, and I usually just call this working. Okay, so I'm not going to labour this too much. If it's something that people are interested in specifically, I'll go into much more detail later. But to give you an example, if I choose one image here, we can go in up the top here to what's referred to as the develop module. Down the side, on the right hand side here, so we get a little, sorry, on the left hand side we'll get a little preview, and on the right hand side here we have a whole selection of tools that we can do to adjust this picture to suit what we want. So we can brighten it, we can darken it, yeah, we can decrease the highlights, which is just darkening the high points, and brighten the highlights. We can boost the shadows, the darker parts of the thing. We can just change it to black and white if we want to. Back to colour. We can do a variety of different things. But one of the great powers of Lightroom is the fact that once I've set things, I can set things as a preset, and I can apply them in bulk across to all the images, so I don't have to sort every single image. If we take this one of the first things I always do is, bikes are shiny and the highlights on the bike will often distract you, so I always immediately take all the highlights down. I will increase the shadows a touch here, and a little bit of texture and a little bit of clarity. Now in itself that doesn't look, it still looks quite dark, but I then have my little secret thing, which is referred to as I call as pop, and what this will do is it will choose the subject, and you can see the bike has now popped out a little bit. I think in this case I will increase the exposure because we're in the shadows. The Corston corner is quite a difficult one because of the shade from the trees, and immediately we're starting to look at something an awful lot better. I always crop my images to make sure that the bike itself always sits in what I think is a pleasing place of view on the image. The first thing I do is set my minimum crop, so I won't crop it any more than that, and the reason for that is that if you crop it too much then you lose the quality of the image. I always find I use this guideline, often referred to as the rule of thirds, and put the rear wheel on that third line there. Then it gives a space in front of the bike, so it looks like the bike is riding into the image. And if it was off to here, it just looks slightly out of place. Off this way, not too bad, because you're putting the rider on the third line and it looks like the bike's moving forward. But I in general tend to put it around there, and that way it to me it gives a nice pleasing look. And if you study if you look at my images, you'll find that's the most common arrangement that we have there. I will every now and again preview the image at full size, because this will then allow me to double check focus and even zoom in, and as soon as you start increasing it, you can significantly see the areas that are soft. But this is at 400 times magnification, 400% full size I should say. So now what I'm going to do is I will go back into develop mode, and I will just do a background adjustment on each of these, to get, like I say, the background where I want. So I'll crop in on that one, select all the images, and we hit synchronize and sit and wait. So now it is the long job of simply adjusting this crop to create a nice composition. And if you imagine, this is going to be a few seconds per image to do, with several thousand images, in this case 1400 to do, it can take quite some time. So once again, I'll speed this up and then come back to you at the end. So there we are, that's the images edited. I've lost a few along the way, so we're down to 1300 images to put on the website. In total, that was about 5 to 6 hours worth of editing to get those 1300 images done. Here I use these categories to break it down into periods, so 5 till 5:30, 5:30 till 8 to 6, etc. So it makes it easier for people to find their images when they're uploaded up onto the website. What I then do is create down here, using plugin on Lightroom, the various galleries, and this links directly to my website, which is how the albums will appear online. And then I transfer the what is in this case 400 odd images I've just done in that category into each of those, and hit publish. And as you can see up the top left hand side here, it's now uploading those onto the website, where my potential customers will be able to access them and buy them directly. I do go onto the website in order to just double check how they look online, and may tweak a few still afterwards, but in reality that's most of the editing now done. And I will choose one of these to use as my little Facebook thing to say that the images are ready, and I use Photoshop just to take that one, put the banners and the text and everything across, and upload it onto Facebook. So there we are, that's the editing side of things done. And as you can see, there's quite a lot more time involved in preparing the images, getting them up onto the website, than there actually is in taking the images. Yeah, so I hope you found it interesting and informative, and not too nerdy, yeah, if you did, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.